Okay, so now we're going to look at exercise 3 for workshop 1. So she tells us she wants us to define variables with the following names and assign values and print accordingly. So she wants us to assign just a variable with some variable value, a width, no decimal point, height, no decimal point, some letter with characters, price with a decimal point, and an area of a circle with 8 decimal points. So to do, declare, initialize, and then print the variables per the above request. So we've got our integer main void function. I still think she wants to keep it void, so we're not going to worry about a return value. So we're going to go ahead and start with our first integer, which is just going to be int, and then she told us to name it variable. So you would type in variable, and to initialize it, in the same line, you just set it equal to something. So we can set this equal to 55. Okay, so we've initialized our first data type, which is just an integer, and we named it variable. So this is where we say which data type it is. It's an integer. And then this is where we name it. We name it variable, and you don't have to initialize it, but she wants us to initialize it, and so we're setting it equal to 55. So the next one, she wants us to do, let's see, she wants us to do width and then height. So we're going to say width and then initialize it, and we're going to say the width is going to be 3. Then we're going to do a semicolon, which brings us to our next line, and we're going to do an integer height, and we're going to set that equal to 6. So we've got a width equal to 3 and then a height equal to 6. And those are just names of integers. Okay, you could name it depth, or you could name it length. Whenever you set an integer, it's going to have a corresponding name. Okay, so then the next she gives us is a letter, and this is with characters as their initialized value. And so for any sort of character that we're going to have, we're going to do char, and that's going to tell the program that we want that data type to be a character data type. So then we're going to name it letters. Is that what she wanted? She just wants letter. Okay, so letter, and set that equal to, and we can set it equal to some letter, so we could say y. And make sure you do the single quotation marks. I mentioned this in my previous video. The program recognizes this as what an initialization value for character. So we've initialized our char letter equal to y. And then the next value she wants is price and then area of a circle. So price, we want to make sure we use a float so we can get precision, and that's going to print out decimal places. So she wants it to be named price, so we're going to do price, and then we're going to set that equal to, say, 80.5. Okay, and then we're going to do double, because this next one, so here, this next one is area of a circle with 8 decimal points. So I believe it's anything past 6 decimal points is going to be a double float, and a float won't handle that. So we're going to do 8 decimal points, and we're going to initialize this. What does she want? She wanted area of a circle. And remember, we're setting this data type to double, so we can get that extra precision that float doesn't give us. Then we're going to do 5.1234567 So that's 8 decimal places. Cool. So now we're going to move on to printing all of this out. So we're going to go ahead and do a print statement, and we're going to say variable colon. So you don't need colon, doesn't do anything. I'm just doing that to make it easier on the eyes. It's not like any sort of identifier or something. So when the program looks at colon, it's just seeing colon. So then we're going to do %d because this is an integer. And I'm going to do the first 3 integers in one line, which you can do. So we're going to do variable colon space %d. This is telling us we're looking at an integer right here. Okay, and then I'm going to do a comma, and this will read %d, and it will not read this comma. So when it sees this comma, it's looking over it. Okay, so we can do that. So we've put a comma there, and then we're going to do, what's our next one? Width, colon, %d, comma, height, colon, %d. Okay, cool. And then we're going to do \n for a line feed. You've got to have the backslash there, by the way, and won't do anything. Okay, so then we're going to put a comma down after our quotation marks, and we're just going to call these variables. So we're going to call the integer variable, respectively to the order of how we've laid this out in our print statement, and then width, and then lastly height. Oops, can't even spell. Cool. All right, awesome. So we've got those first three variables set up there. Now we're going to do a print statement for our character. So we're going to say letter and %c. So remember in one of my videos I just said you've got to have %c for any sort of character. And we named it letter, so we're going to identify it as letter. And that's it for the print statement. I'm just going to do a line feed here so it looks all nice and clean. And then we're going to move on to our last print statement, which I'm going to have it print out the float and then the double float amount. So we've got price as our first one we named, and that's going to be price %f because we're using float. And then we're going to do a comma, and our last one is area of a circle. And we're going to do %lf for double. So then we're just going to rename these here, or re-put the names here, of a circle. Cool. So this should be all good and ready to compile. I'll do a line feed here. We don't have to, but I usually like to do a line feed at the end of print statements. So we've got this all set up. So let's go ahead and see if this compiles. It does. And it returns in the compiler, we've got variable, which we had as 55. You can see that right here. And then we've got our width of 3, our height of 6, and then our letter Y. And right here, you've got float. You've got this price here. You can see how it's printing out 6 decimal places, as well as the area of the circle. It's only printing out 6. So in her assignment, she wants, I'm assuming when she says she just wants with decimal point, she wants 1 decimal point to be printed out for price. And then she wants 8 decimal points to be printed out for the area of a circle. So to do that, I explained it in the first video as well. What we're going to do is we're going to count the number of columns we have here for it to print out for price. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, because we're counting the decimal point. Because the program needs to know, I'm going to print out 1, 2, 3, 4 individual columns of data. Okay. So because we've got 4, that's going to be our first number for our first float. So it's going to be 4, and then that's how many columns we have. And then you're going to put a point or a decimal point, and we want 1 place after the decimal point. So that's we're just going to do 4.1. For our long or for our double float, we want to print 8 because she tells us she wants 8 things after the decimal point. So before LF and in between the percent symbol, we're going to do, let's see, we've got 8 values here, and then 1 with the decimal point, and then another one with the 5. So that's 10 values. So we're going to do 10.8 because we want 8 things after the decimal point to be printed out. So that should do it for us. So let's compile and then run. And there you go. So it's got 80.5. That's just 1 after the decimal point. And then 8 things after the decimal point for our area of a circle. So that is exercise 3. I hope it's not too much trouble for you all. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Cool.